Hey guys, it's Dave. Welcome back to another RocketLab video. Today we are going over 3 recent interviews that Peter Beck did, and these were actually with some smaller podcasts and YouTube channels, that type of thing, so I don't think they've been very widely distributed. There's a good chance you probably haven't come across these as of yet. Big shout out to a few guys in the Discord channel for coming across a couple of these. There's Saeed found one, who I found that same one actually, and George, I don't know if I pronounced that right, but he actually shared the links to 2 more. So yeah, it's extremely helpful to have all of us kind of working together here, trying to build the investment thesis around RocketLab. Every little bit helps. The big institutions have all sorts of advantages, so anything we can do to help each other out, I think, is great. So I went through all 3 of these recent interviews and tried to cut up just the most important parts, and going to give you my thoughts on them as well as listen to what Peter had to say together. I do this for a few different reasons. One, just because, I find it extremely interesting and I'm a bit of a space nerd. But more importantly, as an investor of RocketLab, we're trying to find any sort of tidbits of information that may not be on the earnings calls, even just getting the sentiment of how he's feeling about the company. Is he feeling upbeat and super positive? Or what is the tone like of the interview can be helpful. It all helps when you are researching a company. By the way, guys, if you haven't joined our Discord server, the link is down below in the description. I do recommend you check it out. And a big thanks to the 3 channels who originally interviewed Peter. I'll be sure to link them in the description as well, and I highly recommend you check them out for the full interviews. And, give them a like and subscribe as well. Give them some love. They definitely deserve it. Oh, and by the way, guys, this one might run a little long. I always find it so difficult to cut anything out from these interviews because I really enjoy it and take a lot away from it, even the small stuff. But I have tried to cut away as much as I could. That being said, it will be a little bit of a longer video, so I tried to kind of put the more important details, the kind of concrete information towards the front of the video. Towards the back end, we get into a little bit more of like philosophical discussion and what's your outlook and what did you learn from your parents and stuff like that I still find interesting to give me a bit more background on the CEO of the company that I'm investing in. But the more concrete details I'll try to front load for you, just in case you can't hang in there through the entire video. That being said, if you do watch to the end, I definitely appreciate it, and let's hop over to the videos. Let's go ahead and start off with the first interview. I have cut these up a little bit. As I said, the links to the full interviews are down in the description below.
Lunar Photon continued on, and we kind of kept it there as a backup platform if required, and we ran and have been running a bunch of kind of deep space experiments with it, because that is a platform that is not only useful for what we achieved going to the moon, but it's a great deep space platform for visiting other planets and asteroids and so on and so forth. So. It's been a hugely successful mission for us.
I thought this was pretty interesting, obviously talking about the recent Capsule mission to the moon and their Photon spacecraft. I don't know if you guys followed too closely, but you may have noticed there was a bit of a hiccup with the Capsule spacecraft. It lost communication for a few days and they were struggling to get it back online in time for their burns. So apparently Photon was out there itself and was prepared to kind of be a backup in case the Capstone spacecraft had any problems. They're really testing out in orbit, so I suppose there's no reason why the Photon spacecraft couldn't have kind of covered the same orbit and tested it out to make sure it's able to be stable and use its own scientific instruments. I think we're going to see a lot about the Photon today, and it's a very capable spacecraft that a lot of people don't really assign enough value to.
Peter, do you agree with me that Capstone, we can consider Capstone as an inflection point for the company? It's like now I see you're playing in another league, or that these guys are going to the moon. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, I definitely. Well, we certainly think so. I mean, interplanetary spacecraft manufacture is non-trivial, and not only that, now we have a a small platform launched on a small vehicle for some tens of millions of dollars that can go to Mars, can go to Venus, can go to the moon, and that's just never been available for before. So as much as it is an inflection point for the company, I actually think it's an inflection point for space sciences, because generally those space sciences missions you measure in decades and billions, and now you can measure in months and millions.
Love this. Clearly, not too many companies have been to other celestial bodies, whether that be the moon, other planets or asteroids, or just out into deep space. A lot of people do get to low Earth orbit, but yeah, it's kind of like a whole nother level. RocketLab kind of leveling up, it feels like. Really going further than they've ever been before. And he makes a good point. These missions to, for example, Mars, which the Photon is planned to facilitate, we used to measure that in billions of dollars and decades of research and development time. They're now able to polish off one of these missions with a Photon for $10 million and, super quick timeline. So very exciting to see what the future for the Photon holds.
Peter, did you always envision RocketLab to be an end-to-end service provider? Or I don't know if this is for several reasons, could be like for increasing margins, going public, but from the very beginning you said, okay, let's go into have a small launch rocket company, or what is it that make you go and transforming the company that it is right now to basically you're offering a bunch of services. Electron is becoming a standard. So this was your objective from the very beginning?
Yeah, so actually the second Electron that we ever launched had a kick stage on the top, and in that kick stage had a whole lot of recesses for solar panels, and that was always intended to to ultimately turn into a satellite. So we always envisioned not just stopping at launch, but also building satellites. And once we started building satellites, we realized that the supply chain of critical components there was really strained. 9 months for a reaction wheel or a year for a reaction wheel. So that just didn't meet our requirements. Okay. So that's when we started either developing internal technologies or acquiring companies, so that we could actually get the stuff moving at scale.
I'm just getting more and more bullish on the space system side of the business these days, to be honest with you. So I love to hear the discussion on space systems. I always felt it was kind of a pivot from launch to expanding to space, but sounds like they really did have the plan to get into satellites from day one. So I guess it's more of an organic growth than a pivot. One thing I do think about launch is a couple years ago, everyone was super excited about launch. Even when you're looking at RocketLab SPAC, they're talking about potentially launching every week. And Astra has talked about in the past potentially launching every day. I don't think the demand is quite there yet for that, and it may grow now that the capability is there for cheaper and more easily accessible launch to LEO. But at least right now, I don't think we're looking at demand for launches a day, launches a week. So I really love the growth in space systems, and I think it's really the fastest growing part of the company right now, and it's extremely underrated.
Small launch market that is becoming is huge. We are having only in Europe we're having like a lot of new potential players. We have PLD in Spain, months away from launching Euro 1. Then we have like a bunch of providers in Germany, another one's in France, UK. So I'm thinking, if I'm starting a small launch company tomorrow, and I'm not becoming an end-to-end service provider, I'm dead in the water.
Well, I think there's an important kind of distinguishment to make there. Look, it's incredibly difficult to launch one rocket successfully. Yeah. It's 10 times more difficult to launch your 20th rocket. And so, although there's a lot of small launch providers that are trying to to build a platform to be commercial and be competitive, for as long as I've been doing this, there's always been 100 small launch companies nipping at my heels. But every year there's 100 or 90 or 80 or whatever small launch companies nipping at our heels, and not being arrogant about it, but I mean the barrier to entry is just excruciatingly high, and when there's only really been one or two others that have made it to their first flight, and just failed to scale in any kind of way, and I think a lot of people think flying a rocket once is the hard bit, and it's actually not. That's the easy bit. So although there's a lot of companies kind of trying, as of yet we still remain the only reliable dedicated service. Not to be as arrogant as think that we'll there won't be others come along. But I think when you pair that with being end to end, I think is very powerful. It gives you a lot more options and a lot more visibility. And then having a reusable launch vehicle is also is just another level of kind of call it what you will, strength that is very hard to overcome.
There's a lot to unpack there, a lot of discussion about the industry, and this is one of the things I've worried more about the launch side, where it doesn't seem to be this much of a concern on the space system side, but in launch, there's so many startups, there's so much investment money has poured into it over the last few years, and it's nice to hear Peter expressing some confidence there. It's one of the things I've always been worried about. What about Astra? What about Relativity? What about whoever? What about SpaceX? And a lot of these companies, have failed in the past. And I think there's a fine line between kind of arrogance and confidence. And Peter is definitely on the right side with the confidence as not being arrogant. We haven't ultimately seen a lot of these new players successfully launch reliably. So still happy with RocketLab's position. I do think we're going to need to see some consolidation in the industry. There's just too many new players trying to come in. I don't know if there's enough room for everyone. But I have a lot of confidence in the space system side of the business, and clearly the Electron is a very proven vehicle. So a lot of confidence there as well.
So you're kind of waiting a market consolidation. It's impossible not to happen.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we've all been saying for many, many years, there's way too many small launch vehicle companies, and there's going to be a couple survive, and then that'll be it. But I think we've lived in a very buoyant funding environment for the last 5 years, where a lot of stuff was funded, and that was great. But I think we live in a very different environment now, where
Absolutely.
that level of kind of funding is likely to cease.
I mean, yeah, so he was kind of echoing a few things I said previously about the industry needing to consolidate, but I think more interesting is a good point that the funding environment has changed, and it's no longer going to be as easy as it used to be to raise money, raise capital. It used to be just people throwing money at you. I think RocketLab really went public at around the perfect time. They were able to raise a massive amount of capital through their SPAC. If they tried to do that today, it'd probably be a disaster. But luckily, even though the stock price has gone down, which in my opinion is a buying opportunity, they still have that money in the bank. They've been making some very smart acquisitions with it. They have a lot of runway to profitability. So they were able to raise money at the right time, and will now be able to weather these rougher times where other companies may still need to raise more capital. The environment's no longer really there for it.
And now I see your launch manifest. Anyone can go to your website and I see your launch manifest, and it's extremely diverse and it's impressive. You have solar sails, factories in space with Varda. You are going to Venus, then you're going to Mars. So that's not easy at all.
No, it's not easy. No. It's fun though. It's super fun.
It is super fun.
Yeah.
But my point is, like, if I'm one of those hundreds of small players that want to, it's very difficult to achieve this, to get to this point. It's extremely difficult.
It is, and the projects that we go after are always technically difficult projects. We're very good at biting off really difficult things. The Capstone mission to the moon is a great example of that. The Mars missions and all the other projects. They're both exciting missions, but also technically very, very difficult to do.
Yeah.
But that's what we really love, and that's kind of one of the differentiating factors for us is that we run towards those things, not away from them.
Yeah, just I think every time they take on one of these challenging, difficult missions, they learn more from it, and it just adds to the history of success that the company has, which increases the confidence customers have in giving them more challenging jobs. So really a bit of a flywheel there, and I think, every time they take on one of these challenging contracts, they really do learn a lot and increase their capabilities, as opposed to just constantly launching, the same type of stuff to the same type of orbit.
Peter, I saw several interviews that you were talking, and even speeches that you were mentioning the revolution of the small, maybe a couple of years ago, and how important it was for you to achieve these 72 hours cadence. With this complexity of mission you're having, are you still with this objective, or you prefer to have more complex and diverse missions and to have a more timing in between launches?
Yeah, so I mean, we had set the factory up to be able to deliver one rocket a week. The launch site is licensed to launch every 72 hours. Not that we kind of aspire to launch every 72 hours, but the launch site is licensed to do that. And a rocket launcher a week is a very big challenge. But we've scaled the factory. We have multiple pads, and we're at the point where we could support that cadence in time. The challenge, of course, is the market growing to meet that capability and that cadence. So where we're at the moment is we're launching at least once a month. I mean, the last launch we did 2 launches within 15 days. We were going to do another launch within 10 days, but our customer had a delay. Generally, it's very rare that anybody waits on a rocket from RocketLab. Generally, our cadence is driven by our customer's readiness, not by our readiness. So it's really market driven. The increase in what ultimate cadence you want to achieve. But certainly, we have a factory and a launch site that's capable of it.
Yeah, so factory able to pump out a rocket a week. That's pretty good. We're not launching at a rocket a week right now. So as he was saying, we're kind of waiting for customers. There's always a rocket available for the customer. It's generally customer delays that impact our launch cadence. So a little bit of concerns there. I would love it if there were just customers lined up out the door back onto the street outside their offices with payloads ready to go, and RocketLab just couldn't build enough rockets fast enough in order to facilitate these launches. I think that would kind of be the more ideal scenario where the demand is clearly there. So where we are now, though, is we want the demand to grow, and we have the capability kind of before the demand is fully there. Hopefully it grows, but I think this kind of underlines the importance of both reusability and improving margins and becoming profitable with less frequent launches than maybe we thought we would have had. I know when they went public, there was talk about launching once a week, and that clearly hasn't happened. So improving margins with less launches is important, and also the space system side of the business and space applications in the future take on more and more importance for sure as we look at the demand for the launch side.
How is Neutron coming? How is LC2 coming first?
Yeah, no, LC2 is, the guys are out there flat out. And it's like any of these projects. There's a big empty field for ages, and while you're doing all the design and the certification and licensing and all the rest of it, then all of a sudden the stuff starts coming in the ground, and it's an exciting time because stuff's starting to go into the ground now at LC2. So that's super cool. Neutron's pads, all defined, and will be pouring concrete and doing all those kinds of things, here pretty shortly. So it's a kind of a fun time in the project. Like any project, you kind of just it almost feels like you tread water for ages because you can't see any visual progress.
Yeah,
But there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and the same with the launch vehicle. So a tremendous amount of design and analysis, and now we're building, starting to build full scale articles, which is super fun to see. Giant tanks, molds, and bits and pieces.
Yeah, I didn't know they were starting to build full-scale parts and stuff like that for Neutron. So obviously, we're all following their progress on Neutron extremely closely. We'll definitely keep an eye on that. It's nice to hear that they're not just doing design on paper. They're starting to actually build some parts and molds.
Are you still planning to have a launch from Wallops this year?
For Electron, yep, we certainly are. Yep, it's governed by NASA's ability to deliver the AFTS software and work that they've been working on for the last couple of years. But the pad is ready, the rocket is ready, we are ready, customers are ready. We just need NASA to deliver on what it's promised.
Get your act together, NASA. Deliver your software. It's very frustrating to have to wait for NASA to provide software in order to launch. But really excited to see our first launch from the new launch pad in the United States.
Using them as a exploratory opportunity in the future launch crew, is your idea to use Neutron and a future capsule to go to the space station?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't want to, I don't want to write off anything anymore. Like I've made a reputation for myself in saying we'll never do that, and then having to eat my hat. So I no longer say that we'll never do anything because life isn't funny like that. But certainly Neutron has been designed to be human rateable. It's not going to be rated for human space flight, out of the chute, but it will be able to in due course. So.
I'm extremely curious about how this is going to work with Neutron for human launch. Their fairings do not detach, so you see a lot of rockets nowadays, the capsule goes on top. There is no fairing because the capsule is already able to withstand the forces required. But in the Neutron, the fairing never fully detaches, so that means the entire capsule will have to be inside the first stage, which I suppose isn't a problem, but you wouldn't be able to kind of walk across that arm to load inside, at least as easily as you see with the Falcon 9. Also, the space station, well, Russia is already talking about withdrawing from it as of 2024. I think we're talking about the United States and Europe kind of decommissioning around the 2030-ish time frame. So if Neutron becomes operational around, let's call it 2025, then they have to become human rated and do a ton of tests. How much time of delivering astronauts to the space station do we really have? I don't know. Perhaps there'll be demand to go to Lunar Gateway if that gets up and running. I haven't actually looked into whether Neutron has the capability of delivering astronauts all the way there, but at least cargo perhaps. So really hard to know what the future will hold, but I think it's important to kind of keep all your options open wherever possible. So glad to hear he's doing that.
So I imagine that you have like a drawing board or the first designs of the crew capsule.
Well, not in any great detail.
Okay.
We're obviously ensuring that it's capsule and crew compatible, but I'm a great believer in finishing one thing before you start the other. Hence the reasons why when we started RocketLab, it was all about small launch, and we got the launch vehicle sorted, and then we started to talk about satellites, and then we deliver satellites, and then we decide, we talk about going to the moon, and so on and so forth. So it's in this industry, there's a tremendous amount of kind of aspiration and a little bit less execution. I like to urge on the side of less aspiration and more execution.
So perhaps reusing the same phrase there, too much aspiration, not enough execution, kind of a callback to talking about Astra, I believe. And I try not to kind of throw any shade or insults on this channel to other companies, kind of wish everyone the best and hope they all execute as well as they can. But I do like that Peter has the philosophy of trying to finish one thing before starting another. We are seeing Astra and even Relativity right now announce new rockets and working on the development design of their second rocket before their first rocket is really up and running and reusable. Relativity hasn't had a successful launch yet on their first rocket, and Astra has, but they've been having a lot of trouble. So yeah, I think if you finish your first rocket and take all those extra learnings you get from the troubleshooting, it could probably help a bit in the design of the second rocket, whereas if you jump ahead, design a new rocket before you've really ironed out all the kinks from the first one, you may run into more problems. So I do agree with this philosophy from RocketLab.
Peter, where do you see RocketLab in 5 years?
5 years is a long time frame. Like
I know.
5 years, 5 years at Rocket Lab is like 20. It's like dog years. It's like 20 years everywhere else. So, but I mean, in 5 years' time, I would, we would expect that Neutron is a stable vehicle in the market. And look, if you asked me, a couple of years ago, would you be going to the moon? I would have laughed at you. If you asked me a year ago, would you be building spacecraft for NASA to orbit Mars, I would have thought that's pretty unlikely. And so, the pace of acceleration and movement is continuing to be vertical, which is fun. So, long way of saying, like, 5 years is a long time, and I certainly hope we can continue on this trajectory. Luna.
Sorry about that. So yeah, that was the last clip from this interview. Thank you to Manuel and Peter for sharing these comments. I'll be sure to link the original video down below. I do suggest giving Manuel some love. I'm sure it's a great channel. Just in terms of that last discussion point and the pace of innovation and improvement at RocketLab, you love to hear it, obviously. As an investor, I have a 5-year time horizon. He's talking about basically almost a vertical pace of innovation. So 5 years, who knows where we'll be, and I think it means great things for the future of RocketLab.
Things perhaps in terms of access to lunar orbit and the surface itself, like behind me, from a commercial provider. Where do you go from here, and what do you envision the use cases of this amazing capability?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the thing that excites me the most. Look, the mission was incredibly hard, and it took us, a lot of resource to pull it off. But at the end of it, what we've actually created is a very, very, affordable and incredibly, powerful, but also very, very accurate deep space, probe and bus. So, we've blown past the moon already. I haven't caught up with the team how far we are, but 400,000 plus kilometers out. We can easily get to them. We've demonstrated we can easily get to the moon with this. We can go and visit other planets. We can go to asteroids, and for some tens of millions of dollars. And it's the capability that's been created here is just really, really probably the most exciting thing for me is that when we look at our own missions to like Venus, the spacecraft that we flew here last week is exactly the same spacecraft that we will fly to Venus. There's almost no changes. So, really created a new capability for doing not just, lunar, but interplanetary science at a frequency and cost that has just not been available before.
So yeah, I mean, we've covered this before, obviously talking about the Capstone mission. It's nice that the mission was a success. It'll probably provide a lot of revenue for this past quarter. But more importantly is to be able to go to deep space missions as well as their own probe to perform these science operations. So more important than the one mission is the platform that we've now established for future missions.
Yeah, no, this is spectacular. If you could, maybe, is there one particular story throughout this journey to that you like? Maybe that hasn't been shared before. That you could share with us. Any project like this has these crazy moments where everything's pivotal. Kind of like in the movies, and yet you only realize that they're happening. A year later.
Yeah, look, I mean, there'd be so many of those. I mean, it's one of those programs that. On a piece of paper, it looks super simple. We'll just upgrade a Curie engine, we'll make a Hyper Curie engine, put some tanks on it, a couple of bits and pieces and a good radio, and we're good to go. And just everything is super hard. I mean, the mass fraction of the spacecraft is phenomenal. I mean, the carbon composite tanks, you can see the actually picture behind me. Those carbon composite tanks are just super thin wall, like 0.8 of a millimeter thick in carbon composite. And of course, they have to be gas tight and have to be compatible with propellants and all of those things. And then the Hyper Curie engine itself, 300 seconds of ISP won't cut it. It's a 305, 310. We saw some firings that were approaching 320 seconds of ISP on that engine. And anybody who knows who's built little non-cryogenic engines knows that 300 seconds of ISP. You can go to Airbus's catalog and pick the very best top engine, and it's
not happening.
It's just 310 is it.
Yeah.
So to develop an entirely new propulsion system from scratch, and then just like the radio, having a radio that can do deep space, can do ranging for navigation, really, really complicated tasks. And then the burns themselves. Most new satellites, you get deployed in orbit and you've got, hours or days or weeks to commission it.
Right.
And we saw with the Capstone spacecraft itself, it took a couple of days just to get everything commissioned and happy before the mission could continue. Well, we don't have that luxury. We have a full 3-axis stabilized, deep space spacecraft that gets separated off the rocket, and a few minutes later have to liven up, light, point, go, and execute those trajectory maneuvers flawlessly. And it's not just one maneuver. As we raise the apogee on every maneuver to reach the TLI, absolutely pinpoint precision timing, right back from an instantaneous launch window through to every one of those burns has to be absolutely perfectly timed, perfect amount of total impulse delivered, and really fly that spacecraft. And then, during the mission, we actually combined two of those maneuvers together. We called it the super maneuver. And we combined burns 6 and 7 together and put over a kilometer a second of delta V on it in one burn. And that was because, the propulsion system was performing so well, and, we could de-risk the mission a little bit by just, doing one burn instead of another burn. And then, of course, the TLI burn, it'll be something that I remember for the rest of my life is, we unfortunately we do all these burns in the dark.
Yeah.
So, we lose comms, do the burn, and point the dish where it should be, and it's either there or it's not there. And hence the reason you saw a tremendous amount of eruption if you watch any of the live streams, because the burn's all done in the dark.
Yeah, and then you're waiting.
You're just waiting. You're just waiting for the for the return signal. So yes, it's just been an incredibly exciting mission that is just 2.5 years of just absolute huge amount of work by the team.
And what's amazing about this, just to highlight this for some of our listeners, is the innovation is not just in rocket go up. It's the astronautics here are tremendous.
Yeah.
And the innovation in the maneuvering, right? This is all a contribution from RocketLab that goes out into the general world, just as that is. And the institutional knowledge and capability and capacity that's being built in the employee workforce is really tremendous. This is what we think about. I think you'd agree, Peter, in terms of what we mean by the future of space being in these companies like yours. Is that know-how of having been there and done that, and made those decisions. But this is not the first success either.
Just cutting it off a little there, there's so much technical information about the Photon, and I really think I need to do a deep dive on this spacecraft, so I'm going to do a lot more research on it. I think I'm going to come out with a dedicated video on the Photon spacecraft. Clearly, the propulsion system is extremely impressive. It's something Peter is very proud of. It's a very, very important spacecraft to the future of RocketLab, and it's performing extremely well.
Our space systems division is actually larger than our launch division at this point. We've got some exciting missions. We've got Escapade, which is 2 satellites to orbit Mars, and some LOXSAT, which is a propellant devo in orbit. So some really, really, really cool projects coming out of that team.
I mean, I've said this before, I'll say it again, space systems is too underappreciated. It's very important. I think it may be even more important than the launch business going forward. That may be a bit of a stretch. We'll see how things develop, but a lot of exciting missions coming up for space systems.
And the way we look at responsive launch is it's not just about the rocket. It's also about the spacecraft. So, having so much under the one roof with respect to being able to build whatever the spacecraft we need to and then launch it and then operate it, that's actually true responsive access to space, because if you've got a rocket sitting there 24/7, but there's no satellite to go on it, it's totally useless. There's many more elements to it. The program is really about laying out the process such that if you needed to launch in a hurry, here's how you do it. And in many respects, we've exercised this a number of times already. So instead of just it's just customers coming to us with their hair on fire, it's like we much prefer to put out, a guide about how you do it, and then work with customers to achieve, those goals that they ultimately have.
Not a lot of other companies can do this. When you look at the recent responsive launch and development announcement, if you come to RocketLab, you need to launch extremely soon. You may even need them to provide the satellite. They'll do it all for you, and they'll get you up very quickly. Part of the reason is they have their own private launch pads in New Zealand, so the scheduling is much easier. They have rockets ready to go, rolling off the line, 1 per week, and they're able to manufacture satellites, provide components, really do it all. So if you're in a hurry, they're the ones to help you out.
I started in a small town at the bottom of New Zealand in a country with no space industry, and I guess I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and to me it was just non-optional that this is an area that I wanted to pursue as a career and a passion. I was lucky to have parents that really put no boundaries on what I could achieve. I think a lot of parents, it's very easy for them to say, "Oh, just focus on your grades and do this." I was lucky to grow up in a household where if I had a passion with something, then that passion would be fueled, and there would be never any talk about what's possible and what's not possible. So I think that's important. But I guess if you really want to go after something, then everybody has the ability within inside them to make it happen. It can be super painful, and you have to sacrifice a lot. But if you really, really believe in something you want to do, then you just got to go and make it happen.
Well, there you have it from Peter Beck, guys. Whatever you want to do, go out there and make it happen. Not perhaps technically relevant to the company, but I always like some of these little inspirational quotes he sprinkles in here.
And innovations will elevate not only just the awareness and the consciousness, but also a lot of the problems that we have. I mean, is that something I'm pretty sure that you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. Like all throughout history, there's always problems. So do you just stop? No. I mean, all throughout history, you keep iterating and inventing and carrying on. Doesn't mean you need to not understand and do whatever you can. But yeah, no, I agree 100%. You have to continue to push forward and innovate.
So this is just kind of the constant question everyone always asks about why work towards improving space technology when we have so many problems on Earth. And of course, the answer is these technologies, what we learn actually does improve things on Earth and really goes to make a brighter future.
It had to do a burn pretty much straight away and everything. It just had to turn on, lighten up, and just work flawlessly the whole time. And it's very complicated 3-axis stabilized spacecraft. Very, very hard mission. it represented, sort of 2.5 years of the team's lives and dedication to that mission. But what excites me the most about it, though, is not that it's probably about 800,000 kilometers from Earth right now. Not that. It's that what we've actually managed to create is a very, very affordable platform for going to visit the moon, asteroids, and in fact other planets. So that lunar photon spacecraft now is a platform that we can use to explore, other worlds in our solar system.
Touched on it in the other interviews for sure. Excited to see what this platform holds to the future.
Is it in the future of RocketLab to at one point start to take astronauts to space?
Yeah, so the Neutron vehicle we're developing is human space rateable. It's not going to be rated for human space flight straight out of the chute, but in time, we intend to fully intend to human rate that.
And can you tell us a little bit more about Neutron and if you're in a position to share a timeline or what's the technology and the capacity of the rocket, because it's going to be your big cargo, your big rocket. So what can you share with us about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the vehicle can lift 13 tons to a downrange landing, or 8 tons return to launch site. And obviously, that implies it's reusable for a stage. It looks a little bit different to your traditional launch vehicle. What lands looks identical to what took off. So we don't dispose of the fairings or the nose cone or any of those kinds of things. And we've been running through a reusable program for our Electron launch vehicle, and boy, have we learned a lot from that. And Neutron really feels like a little bit of a luxury to me because generally, if you get to design one rocket in your lifetime, you're in the smallest club on the planet. But to get to do it twice is just a real treat. And taking all of the lessons that we've learned from Electron and apply them to Neutron is just a huge huge advantage for us. So as you look at Neutron as a vehicle, it looks quite different to a normal rocket, simply because it has to go up just as well as it has to go down. And those drive completely different engineering constraints and design points. So the vehicle itself, we're trying to get one out on the pad by 2024. So it's a very, very short timeline for development, and we're making great progress to that. And we announced Wallops Island, Virginia, as the launch site, and also the production factory is just outside the gate of the launch site. There's a whole bunch of things in a launch vehicle that, as I mentioned before, a launch vehicle is a giant compromise. One of those compromises is the diameter, and a lot of rockets' diameters get set by the lowest bridge between California and the Cape. That didn't seem like a good constraint to us, so that's why we built the factory beside the launch site, and hence the reason the vehicle diameter is very, very large, because we don't have those kinds of engineering constraints.
Do you imagine that, guys? You're designing your rocket, and you have to decide the size of the diameter of the rocket based on how low the bridges are where you have to transport it to. It has to fit under these bridges, as opposed to the fundamental what's the best size for the job. It's just crazy. So nice to see that they're building it right next to the launch pad.
So we could spend a month just talking about every subtle design detail, but that's kind of it at the highest possible level.
There's a lot of information there about the Neutron. I found it very interesting. Definitely a little bit of an unusual design. I did hear him say 13 tons downrange and 8 return to launch site. That's a bit different than what I was thinking before. I thought it was 8 reusable and 13 expendable, but it sounds like they can reuse it with a 13-ton launch. They just have to land it downrange somewhere. So I don't know, maybe that'll be a drone ship. I think they did say that they don't plan on doing drone ships, though, so perhaps there'll be a launch site downrange or a landing site downrange somewhere. Not positive on that. I really would like to find out more details.
People have kind of become accustomed to the fact that it's daily or weekly. By the way, when is the next launch for RocketLab?
It depends on our customer, but we launched a few days ago. So we launched 15 days after the moon mission a few days ago, and then I think it'd be another week or so, and we'll get another one on the pad. So what really drives our launch cadence, in fact, is our customers' readiness rather than necessarily our rockets on the pad. So that's kind of the forcing function for our cadence.
Well, nice to hear there'll be a rocket on the pad in another week or so. I always want to get a bit more transparency into the upcoming launch schedule, and I don't always have it. You see missions kind of on the docket in terms of they'll get launched eventually, and you can see the gross bookings going up, but we don't always have the greatest transparency into, okay, we're launching this date, this date, this date, this date. We don't really have that. So good to hear that there'll be another launch pretty soon.
For anyone who wants to participate in this new future, what will be your words of wisdom for basically anyone? Peter's words of wisdom.
Sure. Well, to find out what you're passionate about and just go for it. I think, and that doesn't necessarily apply to just space. That's what I tell every. I work with quite a lot of entrepreneurs and find out the thing that you're really passionate about, and really passionate meaning that you'll trade just about anything to do it, and then just go and do it, and be wherever you need to be in the world to go and do it. I think the human potential is incredibly high, and life is like riding a roller coaster. There's good bits, there's bad bits. Sometimes you're upside down and you don't know where the hell you are. But there's one thing that is absolutely sure, and that roller coaster comes to an end. So, that's the way I look at my lifetime. It's like, well, I'm going to make sure that I have the most amount of fun and I can achieve the most amount of things I want to achieve with my time on the roller coaster before that thing comes to an end. And if you don't do those things, it's a life wasted. So that's always my encouragement to people is find what you're passionate about, and as life finds a way, you will find a way to excel and do the things that you really want to do.
I think that's a great way to end the interview. Very inspiring words, of course. Let's all find something we're passionate about and just do it. I know I'm certainly enjoying this YouTube channel journey and investing. I'm very passionate about that as well. So I think that really is one of the secrets to happiness. Okay, so just to wrap up, that was a lot of new information, a lot of kind of contextual information, and just hearing from Peter is always interesting, always great. I always enjoy it. So definitely learned a lot about the Photon. I think I'm going to actually go deep on the Photon and make a video specifically for it in the future. There's just so much that this little spacecraft can do, this little kick stage. It's extremely important, I think extremely underrated. We also got some new tidbits on the Neutron and where they stand on the development of that, as well as Launch Complex 2 over in the United States. And seems like Peter's feeling pretty upbeat, pretty happy with the state of the company. Feels like they're moving extremely quickly. The future is bright. He said, in 5 years, like who knows where they'll be. It's just kind of like a vertical pace of innovation over there. And talked a little bit about the competitors, some interesting stuff there. So thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I hope you found those videos interesting. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought was the most interesting part of the discussions, and I'll see you next time. Bye.